All right. Great way to wrap up our festival here as we have been talking about technology all day. We thought it would be great to bring in a couple of gentlemen who don't actually have technology in their title. But as you'll hear, that doesn't mean that they're any stranger to what's going on these days and where we're going. So this is our panel about automation. We're going to be talking about a range of things from how technology is changing the way the workforce is doing their job, all the way to no problem. All the way to how artificial intelligence and other nascent technologies are getting wrapped into all of this. So as we get started, first off, we'll start with you, Mike. Who are you and what do you do?
Let's see. Can you all hear me? Nope.
No, we got another one down. Here, we'll start you off here so you can get going. Yeah.
Hi, good morning. My name's Mike Wecklow. I'm the DCFO for the National Science Foundation. I am not a scientist. I'm not a technologist. I'm a very exciting accountant. My wife's an auditor, and boy, you should hear some of our dinner conversations. But we are getting involved in technology in a lot of ways, and it's just changing things as we know it. So thankful for the opportunity to be with you today.
And Bill?
Hi, Bill Brantley. I'm from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And I work in the Enterprise Training Division. I do training and development in the Career Development Branch. But a long time ago, I used to be an IT project manager. And I still do development on the side with open source software. And I actually teach data literacy and project management and some of the other skills that we need in this data world. And let's see, what else do I do? Teach part-time at a University of Louisville. And I teach communication technology. So I try to keep up with all the things that are moving.
Excellent. So, Bill, let's start with you because you have an interesting purview from your perch. You get to see the patents as they come in, the new technologies as they're being developed. So, what are you seeing? Where is automation today, and where is it headed in the near future?
Well, again, you can see a lot of things happening in patents, and in fact, if you want to see it for yourself, we have a great API. You all know what that is, Application Programming Interface, at patentsviews.org. And you can actually search to see all the new automation patents that are coming out there. We have all the data, we collect that. So as you can see, we're seeing a lot more stuff coming in to the patent office on automation. I don't know if you all were aware, but we just had our 10 millionth patent filed in the United States this year in June. And it was something called LiDAR, which is light and radar. And it was for autonomous vehicles. So it basically was trying to help improve the vision of autonomous vehicles. So another one, and I kind of was bringing this out, one of my favorites, IBM recently published a patent, and it's a coffee drone. And what it does is it comes and it delivers coffee to you. It's a drone that comes by, yeah, exactly. And the cool thing is, I have the front page if anyone wants to see it, is it looks at your cognitive state. So that's one of the things that automation is doing. It looks at the cognitive state to see if you need coffee or not. I'm not really sure how that technology works, but it's an actual patent out there. So that's some of the neat things we're seeing. But we're seeing a lot of things in, of course, artificial intelligence, the blockchain. I was looking at some patents on things about digital twins, which is kind of interesting because it's part of the Internet of Things, where your organizations are collecting so much information, you're creating a twin in the digital world of that organization. So for someone in HR, that's pretty interesting because that, to me, gives me an idea of what's going on in my organization, how healthy is it, what is my workforce doing.
And like we were talking before, you had a really great acronym at the table here for what automation really means for an agency. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I had
What am I getting?
just okay, or did it go? Yeah, I'll
Okay.
just use yours. Technology is not
great.
cooperating with us today.
Again, we're not technologists, right? So.
Yeah. I had a professor at the University of Maryland. I graduated in accounting a long time ago, and I went there this summer, and he had this really neat acronym to help make sense of what we're going through. He called it, every time I get the chance to just share this, I just really impacted me. He called it, a professor named Larry Gordon at University of Maryland, he called it the ABCDs of accounting technology transformation. because there's a lot of buzzwords and things out there, but how do you take it from out there in the ether or buzz to really doing it and really changing our world? So it includes things like AI for the A, B for blockchain, C for stronger cybersecurity, and D for data analytics. And we can go through how we're trying to figure out how to put those technologies into practice.
So when we talk about automation, so often it gets mixed up with things like AI and machine learning. Are those the same thing?
I'm not a technologist, so this might not be the perfect technical answer, but we were talking about like Google Mail, and there's like your emails sometimes can get just drafted for you as you write them. How many people have seen that on Google? So you just hit the tab. So that's kind of like my understanding is that's AI. It's like it's kind of like thought process. But then we have one thing we're working on is robotic processing automation, and it's really all because people think robots technology it's really complicated. It's basically just this software that you have on your desktop that can do manual work and transactional work. So accountants, we're a lot of debits and credits, and we have a lot of workload and budget pressures on us. But just like imagine how you have like Excel or Word on your desktop. You have these RPA software that's on your desktop, and it acts just like a person. It has like a screen name and password assigned to an employee, and they can literally go in and out of Treasury financial systems in the government, get accounting information, bring it back to the accountant's desktop, go into our NSF financial system, do all kinds of the debits and credits and balancing, all the manual work, and the employee is freed up to do more analytical and higher level type tasks.
So let's stay on that part of things. And Bill, from the HR perspective, if you could talk about it from two ways. One, are the robots coming for all of our jobs? And two, in what way are the robots coming for your job specifically?
Okay. Well, I know there's a lot of talk about that, and one of the things, and you see it all over there, I prefer to believe that we're going to have augmented workforce, because a lot of things, and I know I work in HR, a lot of things we do is pretty boring, transactional stuff, and I know we force this on our customers sometimes. But yeah, automating that piece is going to be great, because then it frees up our folks to actually concentrate on the people and actually work with the special cases. So like in my own training department, we're trying to automate a lot of our stuff so that when we get training requests and we're doing things like course registrations, all that kind of stuff that can be automated, we can put that aside so we can actually concentrate on the workforce and training them better. So that's how we're looking at it. So we're looking at RPA also in that. And I want to also give you kind of an example, though, when you're talking about the difference between automation and artificial intelligence. A cool thing that we're doing at U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, president of this thing, it's an affiliation group called the Club of Open Data Enthusiasts. We have a highly educated workforce at USPTO, so they love to get together and talk about data science at lunch. And one month we had a great little presentation about a chat bot that someone built for the manual for patent examination procedures. I don't think anyone's ever read it. It is humongous. This is how we do our manual, this is how we examine our patents. And what he did is he had a artificial intelligence chatbot read this using deep learning and neural networks and all these things to understand it. And essentially, how many of y'all have like Alexa or Siri at home? So this is like Alexa or Siri, but for patent examination procedures. So it's still in the experimental stage, but now instead of having to go and look up in an index or ask someone, you can just ask this chatbot and it'll give you the answers.
So is it like a chatbot? Is this a new idea, or has somebody done this before? Is that what you're looking at?
No, it's an experimental stage. We're looking at adding it in. I know that we're doing some more increasing automation at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, because we got to do all that patent examination, of course, and we got tons and tons of data to go through.
Yeah, and in fact, you all have a RFI out right now looking at some of the technologies in AI and quantum that might be able to help that. Can you talk any more about that?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, we launched something just last year. We call it the DAVE, the Docket and Applications Viewer. And this is how the patent examiners go through all the patents that are being filed, and they can use various tools to search, because one of the things we do with a patent, we got to make sure it's unique, novel. So we got to look for something called prior art. In other words, has someone invented this before? And this is what the DAV does. Now that we've reached 10 million patents and we're rapidly going faster, it's harder and harder for us to do all the searches. So we have all kinds of great search engines out there right now. But we have to develop more ways of searching just beyond what, the old Boolean search that you would see and like with Google. So we were looking for artificial intelligence to help with that. And when we talked about the quantum, and I remember reading the RFI and it was basically saying, like, we just want to plug in for our system. But something to allow us to search quicker and to be more, how can I say this? Not as literal in the search, but being able to look at the nuances. Because in patents, sometimes it's the nuances that tell you whether it's a prior art or not.
Interesting.
Can I just add to that two things? We have something similar. Like, we do a lot of work where we give funding to universities, and how many people remember in college, like plagiarism, what a concern that was in research. I mean, that sounds similar to what you described with PTO, but our inspector general, they are our auditor for our agency. They are piloting these technologies. So they're a little ahead of us, but they're coming up with risks and issues that we've got to be prepared for, because they got this software that can just look at thousands of proposals, pick out flags of risks for plagiarism, and then you have people reading and just can't keep up doing it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
But I also had a point I wanted to make on the employee element. That was your beginning question? I kind of feel that it's a little bit of it's a lot of a change management process. Like with the RPA, when we first started talking to employees about that, you see things like Westworld or the Terminator. They get really scared, or they're doing out of the job. But we just sat down with them and said, let's look at the workload. Let the employees pick the areas that would really cut down their workload. And then second, with blockchain, you'll see things with like, Bitcoin, people get really scared, it'll never work. But it's really a matter of just kind of pressing through that and then, going through the stages of change management. But like once you kind of get through that, the employees are just loving it, because it means they might, instead of the end of the day, with a workload on their desk and having it be on their mind at night, they come in the next morning, that manual workload is complete, and they're just reviewing, the exceptions.
And for all of those out there who heard blockchain and immediately started to zone out, don't forget, he is in finance. This is a legitimate use of blockchain, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Bitcoin. Like I was writing a paper the other day, and I made just figuring out what it was. I made reference to Bitcoin, and people got so nervous. They were like, "Don't even put Bitcoin." And I was like, "Really? What?" But it's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And again, I said before, if anyone in the audience has questions, feel free to throw your hand up. We'll take them as they come. And you got two people here who really understand how this is getting implemented. So if you have implementation questions, these are the guys.
Can I make one real quick point? Because you brought up something I've been thinking a lot about. And in training right now with our employees with artificial intelligence, of course, everyone's thinking about data literacy. Another thing that I've been pushing is process visioning or process engineering. Because with these new tools, and I remember when I was an IT project manager and I used to program these things, if you have a process that's not very good or stupid, and you put it in automation, you just make it faster and you can increase the impact of harm that it does.
Right.
So one of the things I do is I want to make sure my people look at, well, if we're going to make this a process, let's go through the steps. Let's understand, is this a good process? Should we automate this part of it? So kind of thinking more about how do I make this process intelligent so I can actually fully utilize the artificial intelligence.
That sounds like a people problem again, not a technology one.
Yeah.
So as you're doing this, can you talk more about that process? Let's say you've got something that you're looking at and you say, you know what, this is just menial labor. We can automate this. Walk us through that life cycle from who do you bring to the table? How do you look at the technologies? How are you buying it? Can you just give us a quick, here's what you need to do to get something automated.
Okay. Our first step, and we've been at this about 6 months. I mean, we're kind of just learning what it was, and hearing things like this conference. But the first step, there's different stages you go through. The first stage is called like a use case proof of concept, where, and it's just as you mentioned, understanding your business process, like, accountants, internal controls, we have a lot of, that Sarbanes-Oxley type, documentation. So we've got flow charts all over the place for how our accounting work's done. But basically what you do is you sit down with, your employees, the process owner, the people that know how to program the technology, and you just map it out. And literally, it's just, some of the tools we've seen, it's like Visual Basic type, flow charts. You set it up like that, and then you do these, these tests of it. And what I've found interesting with the workforce is, you're seeing them start to change their skills in terms of, like, I have this one employee that has all this just manual entry labor work, and now they're learning a new skill about how, not technology programming, but how to, like, take, if you have a power user on Excel or a power user on PowerPoint, it's kind of like that. It's not that hard. You can learn it, and so she's, motivated. She's like seeing her workforce or workload go down. She's learning a new skill. And then the other stages of it, so there's like, just to take it from the top, there's the proof of concept, the use case, and then there's a whole process you got to work through with your CIO. That actually, I would say the first thing you do is contact your CIO office, because they can help you from, a system security perspective, bringing in this software into your, your agency or your business environment. So we're kind of doing what we're calling informally a robot control plan, just to make sure, we don't have a Westworld incident, or anything like that. But, so we're audit ready.
Yeah.
So if I know this is going to be different based on different processes and different, but if you could kind of give us more of a generalization, if I want to just get started, and I've got some small process I can automate, and I just want to get the ball rolling, how important is it that I have my CIO in the room as I get started? Is this something you can do without having the technologist in the room, or do you need that expertise there?
This is, I hope I answer your question completely, because I think there's a little bit of a generational thing, going on, and I'm kind of finding, oh boy, I'm kind of like I'm starting to get up there towards the tail end of the generations. But I had a stat, like, and I don't know if it was a millennial or what, the one before that. She just went on YouTube and started learning. Literally, YouTube. The technology, typing it in, and there's like all these videos out there. And she, when I first heard about it, I was like, YouTube, what do you mean? You got to like take a formal training, do all this stuff. But, I look at my kids with, how they're just so different with all this technology. It's a little different, but it's literally, you can train yourself or learn about this on YouTube. It took me a while to get used to it, but then I said to myself, if I ever at the weekend need to figure out how to, fix my refrigerator in my basement or fix my garage door, I go on YouTube to see how to do that.
That's fair, but fixing your fridge isn't going to precipitate Skynet, right? To bring it to a more serious level, Bill, what do you think about this? Is this something where you can be an amateur and do it, or are you going to break stuff?
Well, I've been seeing the rise of what they call the low-code or no-code movement, where they do a lot of, you don't have to really know how to code. It's like you said, just drag and drop and put things in there. So I've been seeing that a lot. And one of the things I encourage our folks to do is, to kind of help themselves. Now, I like YouTube, but as a training professional, you want to make sure you content curate that, because there's a lot of crazy stuff on YouTube, too. If you want a list, I'll send it to you later. But And, it was one
Not
of the things.
on his government email.
But one of the things you're talking about, and it's a kind of a shift in the training paradigm too, because used to be training was an event. You would come to a classroom, we train you in stuff. Now it's something we talk about in the flow of work. So like with your example, you need to know something. Well, I just pull up this YouTube and I watch this video, and we're looking at right now putting in there kind of a Netflix player so we can have these videos for you. So for example, we have videos that are just what we call quick hits. So if you need to know how to use SharePoint, something on SharePoint, or if you need to know how to do a mail merge in Word, you come, you get a 3-minute video, it shows you, you can go back to work. So that's how that's helping. And automation is helping with that because on the back end, it's telling me, which videos are the most popular? Who's seeing these? When do they hit these? So for example, we did a big Windows 10 rollout, and we did a big Office 365, or one of those, one of the new versions. And that's what I started looking at. Well, what were people looking for? What do they want to know more about?
Right.
So then I can adjust my training curriculum to account for that.
Excellent. Do we have any questions from the audience? Oh, got one in the back there.
So in architecting the future of federal automation, have you run into any issues with the union as part of the federal government?
Yeah, that is interesting. So, we have these, things are so regimented based on these the union contracts. Is this an issue?
Our experience, I mentioned one of the first people you call is the CIO, but I would say your union rep as well. And also, we're doing a number of things. We're, reaching out, I call it, and getting help from others. Like we're reaching out to our HR office on the strategic human capital aspect. Getting their guidance on, because you're right, you see things about this technology, people are going to get out of a job or something, so you got to be really careful how you frame it. And you saw, I just slightly mentioned YouTube. You got to be really systematic about it. So what we're doing is we're working with our HR office, understanding how it's, changing our business processes, how it's going to have new, training and skills opportunities for it. There's not like a motive to do people out of a job or faster, better, cheaper, and do something negative to the employees. Just the opposite. At NSF, one of our FEB scores, the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, like workload is the top concern of our agency. So we're like engaging our employees, engaging the union that, this is a good thing. And then having tools to help people reskill, take training, etc.
Right. And as the HR specialist, we definitely want your perspective on this,
Oh,
Bill.
yeah.
But also within that, if you could touch on when it's important to clue in HR and the unions, right? Because every little thing, maybe not, but at what level? Yeah.
Right. Well, working in training, of course, we have labor relations in the HR office, so they're always involved with us. So we have, regular meetings. We talk to them about what training's coming up. They get us feedback on that. So we have a good continuing relationship with them. But one of the things too is that there is that kind of fear. But it's interesting when you look at the data. Like I was reading about something the other day, what they call the ATM paradox. And I'm old enough to remember when ATMs were new, and when they first came out, people said, well, all the bank tellers are going to lose their jobs. What actually happened is that there was an increase in bank tellers because now you were able to have more people kind of give more personalized and customer service to the customer. So they were freed from having to just count out change and do things. So in some cases, when we talk to them, we say, this doesn't necessarily mean you're going to lose your job. It means we can shift you to something more appropriate for your talents.
Yeah, and I had a cute conversation the other day with one of my mentors. I was excited about this, telling him about it. He's like, "Oh, we went through that in the '70s with calculators and spreadsheets." So it's like there was a big fear accountants were going to lose their jobs. It was just the opposite. More jobs came from it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So we're getting short on time, but there was one more thing I wanted to hit on, which is the customer experience portion of this. The customer being the federal employee. Mm-hmm. As you're rolling out new automation tools, what are you doing to ensure that it's actually making people's lives easier and that that technology isn't so difficult to use that it's adding more work?
I tried to say this earlier. I went to them first and said, employees, what these tools, which ones would help you, do your job better. It's going to bring some changes. We're going to have to learn some new things, but we asked the employee. We started with the employee.
And when I was at Office Personnel Management, we started the lab at OPM, which is all about human-centered design. So I do a lot of human-centered design when I'm building this, because that way I want to make sure I have the stakeholders in at the beginning and overcome that fear of the technology.
Excellent. Please join me in thanking our fantastic panel for helping us wrap up today. And that is the end of our tech session today for these panels. But go off, have lunch, do some networking, but come back at 2:30 for the Bold Showcase. That is going to be some just fantastic presentations that y'all are not going to want to miss. So we'll see you all again at 2:30. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.